Old bankruptcy lawyer, and I wanted to give you at least one Christian's perspective on moving through the darkness. So I'm going to tell you a story about crawling through a cave, but you think about it in terms of your current financial condition and the way that it's affecting your life. We have our acetylene torches on our hard hats, and we have our climbing ropes and things with us, and we crawl up and down and in and out of this big cave for maybe half an hour or an hour, and we finally come to the end of a tunnel, and Major Childs looks at us and says, "Well, here's where the gun barrel begins." And we look at each other like, "Where? This is a dead end." He says, "No, right down there." And he points to a little hole, a little crack in the rock down at the base of the rock wall. It was maybe this high and maybe that wide, and we're all looking at each other, shaking our heads, thinking he's kidding. There's no way we can crawl through that. We can't even get our shoulders through it. And he says, "Oh well, you don't, to get through the gun barrel, you don't crawl on your hands and knees. And you can't go on your belly either. What you have to do is put your arms up over your head like this to squeeze your shoulders together and get your shoulders narrower, and you lay on your side on the ground, and then you inchworm on your side like this through the gun barrel." So we're looking at this little hole in the dark there in this cave, and we're saying, there's just no way. And you get down on your knees and you take your hard hat off with your acetylene torch, and you shine the light down in the hole. And you can see into the hole maybe 6 or 7 feet, and then it curves off in one direction, and you can't see any end. You can't see where it's going to come out. You can't see your way through the hole. And that's one of the most frightening things about it. Maybe a little bit like where you are now, kind of caught in the darkness, and you don't know where you're going because you can't see your way through the darkness to the end. Can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Well, that's where we were. So I got down on my side on the ground and put my arms up over my head, took my hard hat off and stuck it into the hole ahead of me. That was the only, you couldn't wear the hat, you had to push it ahead of you, and that was your only light. And I'm crawling on my side like this through this hole. And it's not until after you get in the hole and you're kind of trapped in there on your side with your arms up in front of you that you start to think about things like, my Lord, if there's any bats in here or any rats or any snakes, my arms are trapped out in front of me. I can't even fend them off. And then you start to think about things like, well, what if the light goes out on my acetylene torch on the hat there, the hard hat? I'll be in this little hole in the complete darkness. And then you're in this little crack, and you can feel the cold stone pressing against your chest and against your back as you're laying on your side, and you're inchworming your way through, just kind of barely moving an inch or two at a time, pushing with the toes of your boots, scooching your hips and then scooching your shoulders through this hole, this little tiny hole. And you have this thought, what if there's an earthquake right now? I've got 1,000,000 tons of solid stone on one side of me and 1,000,000 tons of solid stone pressing on my back. If there's even a little hiccup in the earth, I could get crushed like strawberry jam between these two rocks, and no one would ever get me out. You think about these things while you're crawling through this dark hole on your side, and it's one of the scariest things I've ever done. And Major Child, before we went in the hole, he warned us of one other thing. He said, when you're going through the gun barrel, if you get stuck, and he said, and sooner or later, at one point in the gun barrel, you will get stuck. He says, it doesn't do any good to thrash around and scream and carry on and try to escape. He said, just force yourself to relax, take a few breaths, and then figure out how to get yourself unstuck, and then move on. So sure enough, I'm half to 2/3 of the way through the gun barrel, squeezing through this narrow crack of the rock, and something down on my belt buckle or my belt down on my trousers gets caught in the narrow rock, some sticking out piece of rock, and I can't move. I can't go any further forward, and I try to back up a little, and I can't get back either. I'm stuck in this hole. And I'm sitting there, and I'm trying to control my breathing, but I'm panting, you know, and I got a cold sweat breaking out, and I'm there in the dark, and I'm thinking, there's no way they can get me out of here. You know, if I get stuck here, I may die here. They may have to cut me up in pieces and pull me out of here in pieces to get me out The other guys are already through the hole and there's no way they're going to get back out. And I just can't even begin to tell you how scared I was. And at some point, sitting there trying to slow down my breathing, I had this thought. And the thought was, this is the most alone and the most afraid in the dang dark that I have ever been in my life. And I feel so alone. And then in the next moment I thought, but wait, Jesus Christ is here with you. You and Jesus have this agreement. He lives in your heart. You live in his heart. Everywhere you go, he goes with you. So you, Bob, are never really alone. Jesus is here with you right now. You may feel alone, you may think you are alone, but you are not alone. And I prayed in the next moment and I said, okay, Jesus, you and me, I'd really like to get out of here now. Can you give me a hand? And just knowing that he was there with me, somehow it calmed me down and I got my breathing under control and I rested for a minute and I thought about my situation and I was able to wiggle and squirm this way and that, and I finally got my belt loose from the rock and I went on through the gun barrel and I was okay. So the reason I tell you that story is some people in bankruptcy right now, they feel like they're stuck in a dark place and they can't see the way out. One of the things, and some of them get caught in what I call a fear paralysis. They can't decide what's the right thing to do. They think about doing this, but they don't do it because they're afraid it might not be right. They think about doing that, but they don't really do that either because they're afraid that might not be right. And they go back and forth, what should I do, what should I do, and they don't do anything. Fear paralysis. And they feel so alone and so scared and life seems so dark. I just want to tell you, if you're one of those people caught in a financial crisis and you feel like you're alone in the dark, if you're a Christian, cry out to Jesus, because you are never really alone. And if you're not a Christian, this might be a really great time for you to make an agreement, to call on Jesus and say, look, I'd like to make an agreement. I'd like to invite you into my heart. I'd like to invite you to come and have a place in my heart and live in my heart with me, and maybe you can give me a place in your heart too. He always will give you that place in his heart, you know. He'll never deny you. And remember, with Jesus Christ in your life, you are never alone. And you will go through whatever you have to go through. And this too will pass. God bless you. Bye.